So good afternoon, colleagues. As many of you know, I'm Cuauhtemoc Figueroa. I'm an English teacher here at Citrus Hill High School. And from the needs survey that I sent out to everybody, it was determined that you felt you would get the most benefit from culturally responsive teaching and learning strategies. So that's going to be the focus of our professional development today. We're going to explore culturally relevant teaching, define what it is, how our biases affect our teaching and students, and strategies that we can use immediately in our classroom. This will be first of 4 professional developments because we'll be going through the 8 competencies as outlined by the California Department of Education on the competencies of culturally responsive educators and those assets and those skills that they possess. There's a QR code that you can scan that'll give you access. So if you have your device, you can use that, or I shared the presentation with you via email. Any questions so far? Go ahead. So we have 3 objectives that we are going to accomplish today. The first is that we define what culturally responsive teaching is. There's a lot out there right now within the media. If you're reading any kind of educational journals or even watching the news, there tends to be a lot of confusion between what culturally responsive teaching is and it being equated to critical race theory. They're 2 completely different ideas. One's a graduate level law course, and these are strategies that we can use within the classroom specifically for our students of color, but we'll get into more of that later on. Our second objective is we will address the culturally responsive educator competencies. Like I said, there are 8 of them, but we're gonna start nice and slow. We're gonna do 2 today, 2 before the end of the semester, and then we'll finish off with the last 4, split them up between second semester so that they're in digestible pieces. And it's a lot to take in, and it's a lot to have to reason, and it's a lot to need to incorporate into whatever it is that you're already doing in your classroom. Because as you'll find, most of these things, we're doing those already. And then the third is I'm going to provide a couple of strategies that you will be able to immediately implement within your own classrooms, okay? So what is culturally responsive teaching? It's an approach that leverages the strengths that students of color bring to the classroom that make learning more relevant and effective. A major goal is to reverse those patterns of underachievement, shore up those gaps that our Black and brown students have faced, which were only heightened and brought more to light through pandemic when we were teaching through distance learning. Part of being a culturally responsive educator and part of CRT is recognizing that our students of color have cultural capital that we don't always recognize due to our own biases. And that if we utilize our students' strengths as opposed to look at those things as deficits, we can be more successful with them in the classroom with the strategies that we implement. I have a link right here to the California Department of Education that outlines what that definition is. The competencies that we will get into, we're going to concentrate on these 2 today, but at any time you can revisit those throughout the, after our session. Okay. Let's go to the next one. So why do we need culturally responsive teaching? I'd like to share a personal story before we get into the benefits of it. When I started school in 3rd grade, I had moved from LA out to Riverside, and my name's Cuauhtemoc Figueroa, and I could always tell when teachers got to my name whenever there was a sub in the class, because we would go through and it would be Alex, Tyler, Justin, and there was always a long pause right before my name, so I knew automatically, even as a young kid, teacher had never seen a name like mine. It has indigenous roots, and it always kind of made me feel, it made me withdraw a bit, and it made me feel out of sorts in a way, because my name wasn't viewed as the norm. And that had a profound effect on me, especially in 3rd grade. I had my teacher try to nickname me Freckles, Cutie Pie, probably inappropriate things that you would consider nowadays. But I was like, no, my name's Cuauhtemoc. My family calls me Temo, that's what I go by. Resulted in a conversation where my parents had to come down and we had a conference. But I think that was my first experience with me not being valued as a student of color as a brown student, and those feelings of deficiency. I was working from a deficit because my name wasn't like everybody else's. And I think that's why culturally responsive teaching and learning is really important. So at a personal level, I'm very passionate about this. And I think we can do a lot to recognize that capital that our students come with, like I said. So why do we need culturally responsive teaching? Builds trust. Once we build those relationships, we build that rapport with our students, we learn their names and we say them properly, we can build trust, because nobody's going to learn from an educator that they don't have trust in. Because teaching and learning requires quite a bit of vulnerability. You need to be able to let your guard down, especially when you're learning new things. And if we can develop those relationships, it'll be easier to get done or to do the things that we need to in order to address the standards or the lesson or whatever skills we need to do to develop that critical thinking or reading and writing skills. CRT also encourages collaboration, because once we recognize who we are and we find value within ourselves, we can find value in others. And in finding value with others, we can learn how we can work together to solve real-world problems. It improves communication, creates supportive and respectful environments. When we see how diverse our campuses are and our student bodies are, and we recognize our students coming with strengths as opposed to deficiencies, we're going to learn to work together more productively. And then finally, when students feel like you see them, you listen to them, you hear them, they're going to thrive within the classroom across any subject, across any topic. Next slide. So I want us to watch a quick video on what culturally responsive teaching is. This is Dr. Zaretta Hammond, who has done extensive work on culturally responsive teaching and the brain. So there is neuroscience that is tied to this. It's not anything that has been developed. It's all scientific based, and it's all based on data. So this will give us some more access and some more insight into what culturally responsive teaching is and what it is not. So take a minute, watch the video, then we're going to do a short activity after this. I'm going to turn up the volume.
Hi, and welcome to another PL Together Lounge Talk. I'm Adam Geller, founder and CEO of Edthena, the video coaching platform for streamlining feedback to teachers. Today, we're joined by Zaretta Hammond. She is the author of Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, and she's also someone who previously taught writing and now has a collection of children's writing in the form of a large library of children's books. Zaretta, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start by kind of bringing folks into the kind of area of culturally responsive teaching and discussing that. And I think we should, start by defining it. What does that mean? Because I feel like we use that phrase a lot, and in some ways we kind of like throw it around like a buzzword, but like that feels a little dangerous.
Yeah, it actually is. So we start with defining it, and I think this is where, for those educators that are really, really committed to equity, it behooves us to really get more nuanced in how we talk about it. So culturally responsive teaching, typically we talk about it in the same realm of social emotional learning and development. It's about relationships, and if we get on par with relationships,